Okay, well, I guess we will get started. People can just jump in here when they're able to. I'm very happy that we're able to get this data webinar on for everyone that's joining us today. My name's Natalie Martin. I'm the founder of the Swim Global Project. Our mission is to deliver and support life-saving and swimming programs in local communities worldwide, ensuring that everyone has access to essential water safety education. Again, I want to thank you for joining us today. This insightful session will focus on the critical issue of drowning prevention and also focusing on the latest drowning data trends. Yes, it's coming out of Florida, but I think this would also be very beneficial for, those of you who are joining us outside of Florida. We are going to be able to provide you with a detailed analysis of some of those drowning incidents, but we're also going to explore how other states and countries can track similar statistics to enhance drowning prevention efforts. Questions can be asked at the end. If you want to join us on video to ask your question at the end, I welcome you to do that. Or if you just simply want to add your question to the chat, please do so. We'll get to all the questions hopefully by the end. This is being recorded, so this will be shared. You can watch it again if you want to and share with your networks, because we know that not everyone can join us live today. I am super grateful to have both Kirby Morgan and Alexis DeBlanda here with us today. I'm going to pass it over to Alexis and Kirby so that they can introduce themselves and we can get started. I am going to put myself off camera and on mute.
Alexis, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alexis, and I am the injury epidemiologist at the Florida Department of Health.
Thank you, Alexis. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be. My name is Kirby Morgan, and I am a child fatality prevention specialist for the state of Florida Department of Children and Families. And what that means is that any child fatality reported to our abuse reporting hotline that is located in Tallahassee, Florida, and is accepted for investigation for potential abuse or neglect by a caregiver, it comes across my desk if it's located in my area. I cover the central part of the state. And I've been with the state of Florida for 29 years, and I've been the fatality specialist for the last 16 years. So I have reviewed a lot of child fatalities in my time. Water safety and drowning prevention has risen to the forefront of my efforts to prevent child fatalities in the last 4 to 5 years. It has led me from local activities for prevention within the central region. Think Orlando. When I'm saying central area of Florida, think Mickey Mouse, think Disney, think central part of the state, Orlando area. It has led me to work on a lot of data statewide that I'll be presenting today. And the last 3 years in a row, I presented with a coworker at the National Drowning Prevention Alliance's National Water Safety Conferences. So let's go ahead and wait, cancel. All right, this is Florida, okay? To give you guys some perspective about Florida itself, we have approximately
Kirby, I'm just going to stop you there. Are you sharing your screen right now, or?
Yeah, I am. And I swapped, so I have the presentation. Isn't that coming up?
I don't think I see it.
Alexis, do you see it?
No, just you. No presentation.
Okay, that's weird. Let's try this again.
There you go.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that's Reno, Nevada when I was there in February at the last National Water Safety Conference. I apologize.
No problem. There we go.
Okay, now, okay, here's Florida. Florida is very large. To give you guys an idea, the area of the state that I cover where it says central right here, And if you look at the Orange County, that's where Disney, Orange Osceola is where Disney is located, in the bottom left-hand corner of Orange County. We have 67 counties in the state that are broken up into 6 different regions. And the Department of Children and Families regions match up with judicial circuits. So we have circuits that are matched up judicially to make it easier on people. We have 825 miles of coastline, or 1,327 kilometers of beaches. There's over 30,000 lakes, and there's approximately 26,000 miles, or 41,842 kilometers of rivers. And that's a lot of water. We are known as a tourist destination. I just pulled the recent figures that were released for 2023, and Florida had 140.6 million visitors. And a majority of them probably came to visit the mouse. So we have a lot of people that come in and out of our state. The most recent statistics that I pulled for individuals moving to reside in the state of Florida is approximately 1,200 people per day. So we get a lot of people coming here that don't know anything about water and don't know anything about water safety. So it is really important for us to educate individuals when they get here, to say, by the way, you do have to pay attention. Now, one of the statistics that I pulled before I went to the last conference in February was I found this graphic that was published in January, showing the number of residential pools per state in the United States. And the top 4 states in number of residential pools also equals the top 4 states in the number of pediatric drownings, children under the age of 18. Florida and California are the only ones over 1 million when it comes to residential pools. Florida, as of January, and it's now July, had 1.6 million. If I had to guess, because I know how much people they're building here, I'd say we're probably pushing towards 2 million residential pools in the state of Florida. The other top 4 states in the United States are Texas, Arizona, and California, and they are included in the top 4. I like to say one of the things that I like to note is Wyoming, which is in the center of the United States up north. They only have approximately 3,000 residential pools. I probably have 3,000 residential pools within a 5-mile radius of my house, and I live about 10 miles outside of downtown Orlando. One of the things that I have done since January, I was being asked a lot of questions. A lot of my data research that I had done for the last 3 presentations were focused on Central Florida, which was the area where I work. In Florida, we have a child fatality website for prevention purposes. Provides all kinds of data about child fatalities in the state, how the children are passing away. And we also have a spreadsheet that I decided to start delving into drownings for a 15-year time period. And the reason why I do this is because I feel that the data drives where our prevention efforts need to be focused. So I took that 15-year time period and decided to do multiple different data points that have continued to expand over the last 6 to 7 months. From 2009 to 2023, there were 1,236 children that suffered a fatal drowning incident that were reported to the Department of Children and Families for investigation. And the caveat that I need to mention is those numbers are solely the cases that are accepted by my department for investigation for suspected abuse or neglect by a caregiver. The example of why we wouldn't receive a case when a child fatally drowns would be a 16 or a 17-year-old drives his own vehicle to the beach to go hang out with his friends and goes into the ocean and gets pulled out in a riptide. Sadly suffers a fatal drowning incident. There's no caregiver situation present, so we would not be investigating. And so that's why I have to put that out there, is because of the fact that these are the numbers that are solely accepted by our department. This slide right here shows the 6 regions that I showed you for the state. My area is the largest one in blue. And so the way I've looked at it and the way the data has pointed things out to me is that fatal drowning of children in the state of Florida is a Florida problem that has been focalized in Central Florida and my area. And I equate that to our tourism and the, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the number of people that we have move here. They want to move to Florida to come enjoy all the water, all the sun, etc. Some of the other data points that I had decided to identify to move prevention forward was identifying the body of water where the child drowned. And I just showed you the number of residential pools we had. And by far, the number of fatal drownings have occurred in the state of Florida have occurred in a residential pool where there were no layers of protection in place, or things just were not being paid attention to, etc. Now, I had to categorize these when I was breaking them down because I found 27 different identifiers for bodies of water where children drown. The strangest one that I encountered was a child that had been in the back seat of the parent caregiver's truck, and it was a 4x4, and the parent went mudding. And if you don't know what mudding is, that's where somebody takes their truck and they drive it through muddy areas, be it a dry lake bed or a muddy lake bed that has started to dry up, or huge mud puddles, etc. And the child got covered with mud, wet mud, and suffered a fatal drowning incident while sitting in the back seat of a car. So for me, it's important to identify the body of water so that we know where we need to focus our prevention activities. With all of the interaction that I've been having on a national level, the statistics for males being a majority of the, gender-wise, males are always more likely to suffer a drowning incident. And the data that we pulled shows definitively that males definitely suffer more drowning incidents. One of the things that we like to identify is the age level. And it's always stated on within the state and then nationally that children under the age of 4 are at higher risk. Our numbers match up and show that 75% of our kids are under the age of 4. One of the other recent data projects that I finished was identifying whether or not it was active swim time where the family was actively in the water, in the pool, at the ocean, etc., or whether it was a non-swim time drowning. And a lot of the non-swim time drownings occurred after the family had been in the water, where the child had been enjoying themselves, and the family decides it's time to go inside and eat dinner, eat lunch, etc. And they do not resecure access to that body of water. So the child thinks, oh, well, I'm going to go get back in the water. And the parent, the caregiver, is preparing food, is doing something. And as you can see, by far, the majority of Florida's drownings have occurred during non-swim times. When I was doing this data breakdown, I separated out the bathtub drownings where children suffered a fatal incident while they're in a bathtub, just because that was a complete separate situation where the child was in the bathtub, because it's not a swim time, they're just being cleaned. So I separated those out. I also separated out, sadly, the homicides where a parent or a caregiver has intentionally drowned a child. So I separated those out as well. And these numbers reflect the leftover outside of the bathtubs and the homicides. This was a recent data project that I completed that took me about 6 weeks to 2 months overall, fitting it in along with my normal work duties. And it was identifying what the distraction was when the drowning occurred. And to give you an idea, all of these could be considered lack of supervision because a child suffered a fatal drowning incident. But I decided that it was important to identify and try to categorize this. And to give you an idea, I had to come up with these specific placeholders, these names of categories, because the legend that I put together is 5 pages long in Word. Because every time I turned around, I would encounter another situation where the lack of supervision, those I coded, the best example was the child was in the pool and they were left unattended. Or they were, most of the active swim time ones were coded through lack of supervision. Other ones sleeping, where the parent was asleep, it was the middle of the night, they were napping during the middle of the day. The phone or computer ones, or if they were doing something on their phone or on their computer. One of the drownings that we had in a county adjacent to the Orlando area in the center of the state on the southwest side, we had a father that was actually arrested in the drowning of his daughter because he was watching TikTok videos on his cell phone while she was in the bathtub and was not paying attention to her. You can see the working category on inside household activities. That's like cooking, cleaning, any type of domestic activity with inside the house. Outside household activities, I coded with anything dealing with yard work, working on the car, working on something in the yard, etc. The party, the get-together issues, to clarify that deals with not somebody partying where they're drinking excessively, that kind of thing. This involves barbecues, birthday parties, holiday parties, etc. Alcohol and drugs is self-explanatory, but I felt that this was a definitive way to identify what was going on when the fatal drowning occurred. For the purposes of internally within the state of Florida, as I mentioned earlier, we have 67 counties. And over that 15-year time period, I wanted to identify the specific number of drownings per county to identify where the hotspots in the state of Florida are. And Broward County is in Southwest Florida, just north of Miami. Hillsborough is on the West Coast over by Tampa Bay. Orange County is my area in the center part of the state, as is Polk County. The bathtub drowning that I just mentioned occurred in Polk County. Palm Beach County is down adjacent to Broward County in South Florida. Duval County is Jacksonville up in the northeast corner of the state. Miami-Dade, pretty obvious, that's in the bottom section of the state. Osceola is also Central Florida. Lee County is a very populated area on the southwest coast of Florida, kind of opposite of where Miami is located, with the Everglades and that, area in between them. And then Brevard County, think Space Coast, where they launch all of the rockets from Kennedy Space Center. So this was for the purpose of internally within the state of Florida to say, by the way, this is where we need to focus our attention. And all of this 15-year data that I've been completing led me to start tracking all of the same type of data points for the current year, because being actively involved on a national level and being involved with a Drowning and Data Public Health National Advisory Council with the National Drowning Prevention Alliance has led me to interact with people outside the state of Florida. And I found that Florida is very, very ahead of the game when it comes to data collection, because we have a public state website where people can go in and check our numbers. Texas has something very, very similar. But what I wanted to do is I want to have this in real time so that when I have individuals in our governmental administration located in Tallahassee, if they're asking questions about what the current status of drownings are in the state of Florida, I can provide them this data right now. I updated this about an hour ago because we had just had the July 4th holiday weekend. Sadly, we got 4 drownings this past weekend statewide, I think is what it was, maybe 5. And what I've been identifying is, like I said, I'm maintaining this in real time. Autism and suspected autism has risen to the forefront because children with autism are 160 times more likely to suffer a fatal drowning incident than children without an intellectual disability. Rental and vacation property drownings are what started my journey to delving into data, because in 2019 into 2020, we had noticed, especially going into 2020 with the advent of the pandemic, we noticed a spike in rental property drownings in Central Florida. Since then, things have grown, as I've mentioned about my data, from not just Central Florida, but to statewide. So it's another data point that I am collecting on a regular basis. And sadly, we are up to 64 drownings. To give you I'll show you more data to show you where we were over a 10-year time period shortly, but we are on a record-setting pace, sadly. This is not a record that I want to set. And as I mentioned residential pools earlier, you can see that it's proving true again, that residential pools are the main culprit for fatal drowning incidents for children here in the state. This is my regional breakdown showing that my area is leading the way once again, which I don't want. And then these are what I'm maintaining as a result of my 15-year data, where I'm doing under the age of 3 and male and female. And the statistics are pretty much on average the same as we go along. I'm also doing the non-swim time, active swim time versus the as well as the distraction data. Like I said, I'm keeping all of this in real time to make it easier on myself at the end of the year, so I don't have to go back and try to do it all. I do it as they come in. This is a slide that I was mentioning showing Florida's drownings over the last, since 2012, are in blue. That's the smaller column. The column in green, that is the number of fatalities received at our abuse reporting hotline for any type of fatality, be it a natural death, be it a undetermined death, be it an accidental homicide, or a suicide. So these encompass everything. And I wanted to give you an idea. We averaged in the state about 450 fatalities. And lately the number of drownings has been averaged in the mid-90s over the last 3 years. Alexis?
Yes, so in addition to this data that they collect at the Department of Children and Families based on reports that are submitted to them, we also look at drowning here at the Department of Health based on what is available through death certificate data. And so as you can see here, we have the number of drownings over the past several years broken down by age group. Now, one thing that I would like to point out, you see that these 1 to 4-year-old children have had relatively high counts over the past 5 years, from 2018 to 2022. And if you looked at the rate of drownings in each of these age groups, you'd see that that age group also has considerably higher rates than the other older age groups. Next slide, please. Yeah, and
Alexis, did it go to the next slide?
Yes, yes. Okay. It looks like we're back to the DCF data.
This is showing the DOH data with vital statistics compared to DCF's drownings.
Yes, yes. So as you can see, the DCF data that does only include children under 18 compared to the data that we're able to access for death certificates that includes all ages, including adults. And then another thing that I'd like to kind of point out that Kirby mentioned earlier, that the DCF data is based on reports that they receive, and the death certificate data has all cases where the ICD code listed on the death certificate by the individual who's filling out the death certificate indicates drowning as the cause of death. So even if we are looking at just children from the death certificate data, we are going to have slightly higher numbers, slightly higher counts for that reason. Next slide, please.
There we go.
And here we have the number of drownings over that 5-year period from 2018 to 2022 by county. And like with the DCF data, you'll see that where we have the highest counts is generally in the more populated areas, You'll see here kind of in Central Florida and around the Tampa Bay area, and also in Southeast Florida and Jacksonville area right there, which is where our major population centers are here in the state. Next slide, please.
All right. This slide I created just the week before last when I got a request from the executive director of a place called the Children's Safety Village that is located in Orlando. He is also the chairperson of the Central Florida Water Safety Cabinet. And Brent asked me, he's like, how many years in the last decade has Florida led the United States in the number of, pediatric drownings reported to my agency? And we knew that over the last couple of years it had been Florida. And we were under, from everything that we understood until I looked at this data specifically, was that Texas usually was number one. So what I did was Texas maintains a website just like ours. They have the real-time data just like we do. And I was able to pull the numbers reported to them and compare it to us. And I was surprised when I found that Florida led 5 out of the 10 years. Texas led 4, and then as you can see in 2014, we had the same amount. But it was very telling. And after I got this request from Brent, it prompted me to reach out some of the people that I've met on a national basis that were located in Texas. And then that led me to California as well. And what I wanted to do was be put in touch with the individual that maintains statistics for both states. So I'm in the process of trying to set up meetings with them. And part of the reason I want to do that is kind of a longer explanation here. The United States launched the U.S. National Water Safety Action Plan on June 29th of last year. And that 10-year plan, one of the directives was for each state to create their own water safety action plan. Myself, along with my coworker, Tina Morgan, who's not my actual wife, she's my work wife. She can't be out. She wasn't able to be on this call with us. But she and I are spearheading, along with Natalie and multiple other individuals that we met throughout the state of Florida, to create Florida's plan. I wanted to touch base with Texas because Central Texas already has their plan in place. California already has their plan in place, published, and published in a pamphlet and everything. So I want to touch base with them because I want to see if there's something that they have done to implement their plan and or actions that they've taken that we could apply here in Florida. Because if they've already done something that we can adapt here, I don't want to reinvent the wheel by doing something that they've already got in place. So it's just a matter of collaboration. So that's what I'm trying to do is open up dialogue between Texas and California, and what I'm trying to do along with multiple other individuals here in Florida so that we can get the number of drownings reduced here in Florida because they are just out of control. And so now I believe what we're going to do is we're going to step back for a second. I'm going to let Alexis share her screen so she can talk about DOH's Florida's charts here in Florida and guide everybody through it. It's all yours, Alexis.
Thank you. Yes, let me start sharing my screen. All right, everybody should be able to see the charts website now, correct?
I see it.
Yes,
Perfect.
thank you.
So this is our public-facing website where any of you can look at data on any number of health topics. But since we're focusing on drowning today, I'm going to show where you can look at some of that information specifically. So under profiles and dashboards here, if you click on injuries, there are a few things that we want to look at. So first we have the fatal injuries profile here. So you can select any particular county in the state, or you can scroll down and select the whole state overall, and then you can also select the year. We have information here back to 2007. So we have several tabs here. One of them just lists the number of injuries by age group and intent. And then here we also have the total number of fatal injuries by mechanism. And so if you look down at the second row here, you'll see the number of drowning deaths by age group in Florida overall in 2022. And then you can also look specifically at unintentional injuries, suicides, and homicides by mechanism. So if you're only interested in unintentional drownings, which is a sizable majority of all drownings, you can look at this tab here. And then we also have similar injury profiles for non-fatal emergency department visits and non-fatal hospitalizations. So the fatal injury information is from death certificates, which we get from the Bureau of Vital Statistics here at the Department of Health. However, the non-fatal injury hospitalizations and emergency department visit data, we get that from the Florida Agency for Healthcare Administration. They send that information to us at the DOH on a quarterly basis. And it's also good to note that the hospitalization and emergency department visit data, that is administrative data provided by the different hospitals, the facilities here located in the state. And then the information presented on this website is specifically for Florida residents. So if someone a tourist visited Florida and drowned while they were visiting here, that would not be included on this information on these websites here. And then additionally, we have the injury dashboard where this one is a non-fatal injury dashboard. That's just another way to look at some of this same information on the hospitalizations and emergency department visits that I mentioned earlier. And you can also look at specific counties compared to the whole state. And then there's also a leading cause of fatal injury dashboard here that also allows you to select counties or the whole state. And then you'll see if you look at ages 1 through 4 here, that drowning is the leading cause of fatal injuries among that age group. So it's a really great source of information if you all are interested in learning more about drownings, injuries, or just health outcomes in general here in Florida.
Thank you, Alexis. Are you able to put the link to that in our chat just so that people can grab it and copy?
Yes,
that would be great.
absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And then Kirby, I'll let you put your presentation back up. That was very helpful, Alexis. I really appreciate the access to data from the charts as well when we are looking at developing public education campaigns and what the focus and messaging should be. So it's really helpful, from a public education standpoint. So Kirby, I'll pass it over to you.
Oh, I'm back, Natalie. I was responding to questions in the chat. That's why I was hesitating.
Yes, no, exactly. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I know David. I've interacted with David a little bit. I've been on webinars and other calls where I've listened to him speak. So I was trying to answer David's questions. And addressing the last one, whenever we're pulling the data, it's dealing specifically with reported, not identifying whether they were residents or non-residents. The closest I came to doing that was a 10-year time period determining how many Airbnb which Airbnb, by the way, everybody should know who Airbnb is. They have, after our interactions with working with Airbnb, they have become the noun for the rental property industry. And through working with them, it led us to an agency in the state of Florida called the Florida Alliance of Vacation Rentals. And working with them, we found out that there's over 400 different companies in the state of Florida that identify as doing rental properties, be it individuals that own a home or be it, I don't want to say rental property communities, but realty places that own multiple properties, all the way up to Airbnb and VRBO. And so I was able to identify that, and I did data points to determine how many rental property drownings I had in Central Florida. And as I was responding to David, that is what my next project is going to be, is going through that 15-year time period and doing my best to identify whether or not they were here or whether they were staying at a rental property. And sometimes also to address David's situation, we'll have people that will rent a property in Central Florida, but they live in Florida. Where I know we had one where they live in South Florida, but they came up to Central Florida and did a rental property. We'll also have family reunions where they get the 7-bedroom houses where there's 40 people in the house and all the adults think every other adult's watching the kid and nobody's watching the kid and they suffer a fatal drowning incident. So they're still Florida residents, but they're staying in a rental property. But it's going to be one of the next ones I identify is to determine that. Now.
So I'm just going to ask anyone who's on the chat right now. There's some really good questions being asked and great answers. Thank you, Alexis and Kirby, for being really quick on that. So if you want to go into the chat, you'll see some of the questions that have been posed and some great answers there. So Kirby, I'll let you continue. Just wanted to let everyone know that there's some really good chats going on.
Of course. Now, this is a slide that we put in at the end of the towards the end of the presentation, because these are the questions that Tina and I are continually asking ourselves. What are we missing? And I like that question because I've been focusing on the data so much. What am I missing in the data? What do I need to do next to help the mission within the state of Florida? Because all of this data that I have been putting together is going to be a part of the water safety plan for Florida that we put together. It's going to say, this is why we need to take action. This is why we need to make change. This is why we need to be more aware of, because you saw how much I explained. We've got water everywhere. I'm at my house right now, and 20 feet out my window, I have my pool in my backyard. And I've been swimming. I've been in Florida since 1973. We moved here from New York. I'm one of the transplants that everybody jokes about, but I'm a Floridian by now because I've been here for 51 years. All right. I've been swimming since I was a kid. My parents made sure I had swim lessons. There's been legislation passed recently in Florida because swim lessons are expensive, but the legislation is going to help the lower economic status individuals be provided with free swim lessons. So that's the kind of thing about what we can change, what we can do better. We are continually trying to adapt. I'm helping out individuals with the data, or by providing them with the data to be able to assist in driving legislative change. And legislative change is going to be one of the main ways to do it. One of the main challenges we have in Florida that I would like to see addressed legislatively is that in all of this delving into trying to figure out what's going on with the rental property industry, is that public pools in the state of Florida are provided oversight by Alexis's agency, the Florida Department of Health. All right. Florida's Department of Business and Professional Regulation provides oversight for the rental property industry. But when I pointedly asked a DBPR, rep last year when we saw them at one of the Florida Alliance of Vacation Rental conferences. I said, who provides oversight for the rental properties that have pools? And she's like, that's not us. And so it turns out it comes down to local municipal code enforcement. And that is one of the things that's on my to-do list, is to get a hold of somebody to say, by the way, is there oversight for Florida on code enforcement? How can we enforce? Or make changes to better protect individuals that come to the state of Florida. Because what I want to see is to have them come down here and have good memories. I don't want them to go home with an empty seat. So these are all the kinds of things that we think of when we're delving into figuring out what we can do to make change and make things better and safer for individuals when they come to our state. These are main examples that a lot of you probably are already aware of about what you can do to keep your kids safe. And a lot of our child protective investigators, our service centers have the door alarms in place so that they can provide them to families. In
Are
my
you sharing
areas,
your screen again? Because I can't see your screen.
my screen is not there anymore.
No.
Oh, that's weird. Let's try this again. I
Since you're
apologize.
looking, no, that's okay. And since you're looking for that,
There.
in that whole data collection, I mean, I can envision what challenges you face, but and I think you just talked about it a little bit, but can you expand on what, because I know that some people on this Zoom are probably going back to their communities or their state and trying to figure out how can they now start getting the data that is relevant and up to date and coordinated. So what are some of the challenges you face? Because you've taken this on really from the last couple of years. Can you tell us about that process?
I can try.
Yeah.
And by the way, before I do that, can you see my screen again?
No,
No?
but it's okay. I mean, we can just focus on some of the questions if you want.
Ah, okay. All right. I am going to, oh, what about now?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what I was doing wrong. Call it operator error. There we go. Okay, this is what I was talking about. Now, trying to make change. That's what you want me to address, correct, Natalie?
Yes.
Okay.
How can they
Trying to
implement
make change
this?
can be a challenging. Here's a statistic that I did not give you guys. Florida has approximately 23 million people. I think we are the third or fourth largest state in the US. So we have a very, very, very large population. And some of the struggles that I've already encountered in reference to trying to make change, is that I've been aware that the US national plan was going to be launched going back to a year ago, February, when I was in Colorado Springs at the national conference. I was approached after my presentation there, I was approached by one of the individuals that was actually on the team that created the national plan and was in the process of publishing it, 4 months later. And it's led me to, after we got back here and after I got back from Reno, even before Reno, it was after Colorado, I apologize. It was trying to bring the individuals together because Florida is so large that you've got good work and great work being done individually in local communities, but there was no broader spectrum umbrella to bring everything together. And the joke that I try, by the way, and I joke, I use sarcasm and humor a lot, and that's because I look at child fatality every day. So I have to maintain my own mental health and my mental sanity. And one of the things that I joke about is that
Sorry,
it
you
feels
talking
like
to
I'm
me or
trying to
just
herd
to you two?
cats because if I fall back on the Budweiser commercial
Called you a
from Super
monkey?
Bowl.
No, see, I have rare footage of Catherine at the beach.
Oh, someone has to put mute on.
Yeah, because I heard something about the beach. But yeah, Natalie, that's what I'm one of the struggles that I've been having to do is try to bring all of the players to the table. We're making headway. We're making great progress. But it's just been a challenge because creating a framework for Florida is also going to be challenging because what's going to work in the populated areas, such as where I am in Central Florida or in South Florida, where Broward County is the #1 county in the state when it comes to drownings of no age restriction and then drownings of children reported to DCF. What's going to work there is not going to work in our rural counties where they have hardly any number of drownings. So that what we want to do is try to create the framework to say this is what you can do in your area, and take this framework and create what's going to work for you and your community. So that's one of the challenges. One of the other ones, Natalie, is that for me personally, as a state of Florida employee, I cannot personally lobby state legislators. But the way around that is I make sure that all of this data that I'm putting together gets into the people's hands that can lobby for change, that can go to the state legislators and get that law in place. There was one that one of my slides when I was in Reno this year was a proposed bill that was only introduced in the House. It didn't even get picked up in the Senate, that would have provided regulations for the rental property industry. I don't know specifically why it didn't get picked up in the Senate, but I can only speculate as to what the reasoning behind that is. And trying to make change can be difficult. There's multiple challenges out there to overcome. One of the things that it kind of bugs me in a way is that it's not the agency itself, but when the Consumer Product Safety Commission comes out, and you'll see on the nightly news that a product is being recalled because they've had 15 fatalities because of this device, and that, oh, it's being recalled. And I'm like, okay, that's great, because one child fatality is too much. But then I don't feel that there's a corresponding attention level that should be provided to fatal drownings in the state. Like I said, there's been 64 already. I have seen a lot of reports on the news about promoting water safety, which is great, but I feel like it needs to be paid attention to more, and it needs to be more in the forefront of society, in, the community in Florida, forefront of their attention, to say, by the way, I mean,
Absolutely.
to give you an example, I mentioned this to Natalie when we were talking before the webinar today. My cousin, who's my age, I'm 53, he finally got married. I am ecstatic for him. He had a beach wedding up in New Smyrna Beach, which is on the east coast of Florida, in Central Florida, and he rented a whole beach house complex, and they had a pool. He made sure that they had hired lifeguards during the wedding activities, so that a lifeguard would be paying attention to all the kids, because we're older. So everybody, all of his friends, we've got kids, and the younger kids, etc. So yeah, I thought it was awesome that, because I'm like, man, he knows what I do.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, he knows what I do. Real quickly, this is one of the things that we came up with Goldfish Swim School. And this is a cling that can be stuck to a sliding glass door as a reminder of all of these various different points about things that you need to do. Because active swim time in a water watcher is incredibly important, but it's resecuring the layers of protection on the right-hand side of the screen. Resecuring the layers of protection once you're done with your active swim time. And, oh, this is my own bad, and I'm going to admit to it. The one right here where it says about emergency training, I haven't done CPR training since I was in college, and I don't want to admit how long ago that was. And my wife said recently that we should probably go get, and then she looked at me and she's like, especially with what you do, you need to go get your CPR certification done. So it's another layer of protection. This is just a quick slide showing a bunch of the different foundations and/or entities that we have collaborated with to push forward water safety in the state of Florida. And they are part of the ones that we're going to be working with, because we've got a core steering committee created right now that Natalie is a part of, on working on creating Florida's plan. But then we're going to expand it into a larger group as we move along. There go.
This is fantastic, Kirby, and I really appreciate you taking the time. Alexis, also thank you for taking the time to dive deeper into the data. I think that you would agree that the data points are so important if we want to see change and if we want to identify where the area problems are. So one of the things I wanted to ask, and I think it was in the chat here, I wanted to ask Alexis about was, there's often question about why does it take so long for us to get the data? And I believe Alexis answered it in the chat, but Alexis, can you give us maybe more details on what that process looks like? You know, from your perspective, in your position with the Florida Department of Health, when a drowning death is identified, and then from there, how it gets then, let's say, for lack of a better word, published onto our data site here, as you showed.
All right, sure. So when any death, including a drowning death, occurs, one of the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to have someone, generally a physician, nurse practitioner, a medical professional like that, is the one who's filling out the death certificate. Now, if this death occurred in a hospital setting or something like that, it'll probably be the physician who was caring for the patient at the hospital who pronounced the individual and filled out the death certificate. However, if the death is determined to be a medical examiner case, they will be the one who is filling out the death certificate, the medical examiner at that office. And yeah, and that is also a physician, by the way, all the medical examiners are. And so after that, and oh yeah, medical examiners cases, that's generally anything, not necessarily a suspicious death, but you know, not like an older individual who had a heart attack and died, something that's potentially suspicious or unusual or related to an injury. So a lot of these drowning deaths might be medical examiner case. And so they'll be the ones who are filling out the death certificate, determining the manner of death, which in the case of an injury would be unintentional, which would be like an accidental drowning injury, or suicide or homicide, which does sometimes happen, but that's generally less common with drownings. And so depending on the details of the case, there can be an investigative process, which can sometimes be extensive depending on the details, especially if homicide or suicide is suspected in the case.
And
And so,
yeah, no, that's interesting. Go ahead.
And so that's part of why, especially in some injury cases, it can take a while for the death certificate information to be finalized, because there is an investigative process sometimes involving law enforcement or the medical examiners, especially with injury cases as they're making that determination. And so as a part of all this, the death certificate's filled out by the physician and that information is complete. That also involves the Bureau of Vital Statistics here. They're the ones who manage the data quality portion of all of that. I know sometimes they offer trainings to physicians about filling out death certificates to promote accuracy there. And so after the year is over and the final deaths that occurred in the later part of that year, those death certificates are finalized, then there is also an internal data cleaning process that happens here at the Department of Health with the Bureau of Vital Statistics team that also occurs before all of that information is finalized. And so typically all of that, about 6 months after a death occurs, is when this data cleaning and all that finalized process is complete. So typically sometime during the summer is when Vital Statistics finishes that process and the data is generally made available by the end of the following year. Any questions about that?
That's fantastic.
Alexis?
I mean, that's an extensive process. And I don't know if Kirby wants to add anything to that. We do have a few more minutes. Also, I want to invite anyone, if they want to jump on video or off video, to ask a question, please feel free, but I'll pass it over to Kirby.
Yeah, real quick, Natalie, I just wanted to expand a little bit from DCS side of thing about what Alexis was just saying.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I like to say is that unlike what you see in CSI or any other crime, Law and Order, that kind of thing, any other crime scene show, we don't get the autopsy back in 5 minutes. All right. It takes a long time, approximately 8 to 12 weeks to have a cause of manner of death on average from the medical examiner. They have to run toxicology, which has to be sent off, and it takes time. To give you an idea, also, there are some times when it won't be released, and we can't shut our cases down when we don't have the cause and manner of death, or there's an active criminal prosecution on a homicide case. My oldest case in the region is about 1,100 days right now. It's a homicide from 2021 that the state attorney is still actively working on building the prosecution. So it does take time, and that's part of why there's part of the data, the lag time with the data. For me, when I'm doing the drowning data, it's apparent when we get a drowning what the cause of death is going to be. So I can say if the child was found unresponsive in the pool, then it's going to be a drowning. I had one of the cases that I had out of that 15-year time period. It was incredibly unusual because a child was found unresponsive at the daycare. And when the medical examiner did the autopsy, they found that the kid had drowned. But we don't know what happened because the daycare worker didn't talk. And the daycare owner didn't talk. So we don't know how the child drowned. But all we know is that the end result was that the child drowned. So there's lag time, definite lag time, like Alexis was explaining.
Thank you so much to both of you. Kirby and Alexis, if you haven't already, please put your email addresses in the chat. Obviously, this video training, data analysis webinar will be shared with everyone. And if, again, you want to share it with your network, please do so. If you do have any other questions, feel free to message me. So it is, I think we have 1 minute left. Anyone? Thank you, Craig. Nice to see you on here. Anyone else have any questions right now before we say goodbye? Okay, well, none asked. Thank you, Kirby and Alexis. And thank you everyone for joining us and supporting this work. I know this is tireless work, but we are here to reduce drowning. So we understand the data. I truly believe we'll be able to reduce these drowning statistics. Kirby, any last words before
thank you very much for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
My email address, I dropped it in the chat box. If anybody does have any follow-up questions or would like to reach out to me, I'm here. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Alexis.
Thank you, everybody. I have also put my email address in the chat, so feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.
Have a wonderful rest of the week. Stay hydrated, everyone. It's very hot. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.